Hi, I'm Quence. Welcome to the 7th in my series of reviews for Season 1 of the Playdate, Panic's handheld gaming console. Each week, 2 brand new games from different developers appear like magic on your Playdate system. Week 7's games are Executive Golf DX and Questy Chess. Yes, you heard correctly, there is a golf game on the Playdate in the form of Executive Golf DX, developed by davemakes. Everyone loves a good golf game, whether it involves Mario or just some regular guys. The gimmick of Executive Golf DX is that it's a game of golf played entirely inside an office building. Your goal is to propel your golf ball past desks and fax machines to the top of the floor in as few strokes as possible. Unlike most golf games, there is no person you're playing as here, presumably because the screen is so packed with obstacles that there wouldn't be room for one. Instead, you just shoot the ball from wherever it lands using the power of video game magic. If you've ever played a golf game before, you won't be too surprised by how this one controls. Tap A to start a meter, tap it again to determine your power, then again near the bottom to determine your accuracy and spin. Oh, and yes, it's on a 2D plane if you hadn't noticed, which also changes things, certainly makes aiming a seemingly less complex affair. And overall, this game is less complex than other golf games. There's no putting, no changing of clubs, no trips back to the shop for new hats and accessories. You just hit the ball and move along. Optionally, you can use the Playdate's crank to aim your shot, but I found the D-pad to be much more precise, and it just really wasn't worth the novelty of using the crank in this particular instance. My first experience with Executive Golf was pretty negative. Until you get used to the controls and the perspective, it's very easy to get the ball stuck somewhere. In fact, even when you are used to the controls, it's still pretty easy to get stuck. It can sometimes take you 5, 10, 2 dozen strokes, just throwing a number out there, not personal experience or anything, to get the ball out of a corner, and there is no stroke limit on these courses, unlike other golf games where they'll put you out of your misery after a while. Here, you are gonna hit that thing until you get it where it needs to go, even if it takes you 100 tries. Given enough time and practice, you will get better at learning how you want to aim your shot and how much power it needs, but I still found it pretty tricky to predict that stuff before the dozens of times the ball would inevitably roll right back to where I started it. If you're real worried about your score here though, maybe you shouldn't be, because again, there's no stroke limit, there's not even a par given for any of these holes. There is no punishment for taking too many strokes, no time limit or anything. If you do just want to relax with some weird golf in a vacuum, the game's not going to step in at any point to tell you that you're doing it wrong. And that was sort of the turning point where the game started to click a little bit more for me, when I learned to stop worrying and love the golf. This isn't a game that demands perfection. It's more like a golf-themed physics toy to mess around with and see what kinds of crazy shots you can pull off. The other thing that I learned to love in Executive Golf is its use of power-ups. Scattered around the course, Mario Kart style, are various one-time use power-ups that you can choose to use before each shot. One makes the ball float like a balloon, one makes it super bouncy, one allows you to undo your previous turn. There's several of them. Some of these power-ups are pretty situational, but I found them fun to experiment with and learn when the best time to use them was. Even though sometimes you'll use one thinking it's a good idea and it does backfire on you. The game also gets switched up in a cool way during the second half when you'll be hitting the ball down the floors of an office building instead of up. It's 2 sets of 9 floors, one going up, one going down, and each time you play, the layout of the furniture and other obstacles is a little bit different, but that's it. You don't unlock any new courses or anything like that, so you have to find your entertainment value from those 18 holes. I did start to come around on Executive Golf DX in the end. It has some neat ideas in it, and it's a funny concept, but even after understanding where it's coming from and accepting it for what it is, I still don't think it's something that I'm going to be coming back to. Our next game is Questy Chess from Dadako, which definitely has more going for it in terms of depth and content. This one is billed as a role-playing chess simulator, and it kind of is both and neither of those things at the same time. The framework of Questy Chess is that you're trapped inside an old chess program that's been corrupted, and you need to fix it. You'll start off as a pawn, but you'll eventually gain access to other chess pieces, navigating your way through levels, defeating or avoiding enemy chess pieces along the way. You and your enemies all obey the laws of chess. So for example, the pawn can only take enemies diagonally, and it moves one space at a time except for the very first move, in which it can move 2 spaces. Chess. So it is an RPG in the sense that yes, there is technically turn-based combat, and you do gain XP and levels which reward you with more health, but it probably doesn't resemble an RPG in the traditional sense that you might think of upon hearing that term. To me, it feels more like a puzzle game. It's a series of chess-themed challenges, kind of like you're being presented with a book of chess board states and being asked to solve them. Except that while the foundation of the game comes from the rules of chess, it's expanded a fair bit beyond that. The boards are bigger, there are hazards, and even items which have numerous effects. Some of these puzzles are genuinely clever, but you don't have to be a chess expert to solve them. As someone who has not much more than a passing experience with the game, I found I was able to beat most of the levels in just a few tries. The look of Questy Chess leaves a bit to be desired in my opinion. It's very much going for a lo-fi atmosphere. Even the sound effects are like something you'd hear from a dot matrix printer. I get what they were going for, but the overall aesthetic just wasn't that pleasant to me. And I think that lo-fi design philosophy extends to some other gameplay choices that I didn't jive with. For example, I mentioned you get to upgrade your pawn to other more versatile chess pieces, but those pieces are treated like items that you have to use in order to make that transformation. If you're not careful, it's easy to end up on a level later on that can't be completed unless you have a knight to turn into, for instance. But maybe you've already used your knight and then switched back to a pawn on a different level, and now you're going to have to restart the whole thing. That means you have to go back in the map and find the level that had the knight item in it, retrieve it, and then return to the level you were trying to beat in the first place. I don't know why they didn't just make the knight and other pieces permanent power-ups so you could transform back and forth at will. It's not as if it's a challenge to get more of them. In fact, you can freely replay those levels multiple times to get a ton of knights as a backup, which you probably want to do just so you don't have to run back and forth all the time. It just creates busy work, it feels outdated, and that's something I could say the same thing about for a number of other design choices here. And maybe that's kind of part of the point, in which case I guess it was effective, but I didn't find it always very fun. You're also going to encounter fake glitches and crash errors when you die. Unfortunately, there are actual crashes that cause the game to freeze, and you'll need to restart your playdate in order to continue. Personally, I only experienced these crashes on a few of the later levels for the most part, and while they were annoying, I was able to work around them and finish the game. And I do know that the developer is aware of the issues and working on fixing them, so it's not something that impacted my experience too greatly, but it's worth noting. It's always frustrating when there are bugs and crashes. At the end of each level, you get a little score based on how much of it you were able to complete, and you can go back to try and 100% them all. I don't think that's something I'm going to be doing. If you're a real chess head, there is some cool stuff here. But overall, I found the experience to be a little drab. I wish it was more inviting, more welcoming to play. I wish it felt better to play, and I wish they went further with the concept of this corrupted program, which is really ultimately just an excuse to make some alright chess puzzles. Last week's games were two of my favorites of the season, and there's no getting around it. This week was definitely a step down. Executive Golf really just doesn't have very much going for it, and Questy Chess could be some people's cup of tea, but didn't quite do it for me. Not that I hated either of these games. There was some very creative, experimental stuff going on in them. I liked Questy Chess enough at least to play through it to completion, but neither of them were really home runs. I definitely think they both could use more time in the virtual oven. Let me know what you thought of these games, though, in the comments. If you've played them, do you agree or disagree? Did you like one or the other? And you can also find more of my reviews for the Playdate Season 1 games right here on this channel. Thank you so much for watching.